So today I have Sara Young, who's a realtor, and we've been on the same team for quite a few years. And I'm so thankful she finally agreed to join me today because I've been trying to get her on the podcast for some time. So
Hi,
hi, Sara.
Tara. Hi.
So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, like, kids, family? We're going to be talking about your domestic abuse situation. So go ahead and give us kind of a let's get to know Sara time.
Hey, Tara. It's so great to be on your show. I really appreciate you asking me to be here. I was in a relationship with my ex-husband and married for about 17 years, and we have two amazing boys. They're going to be 20 and 16 here in June, and I absolutely adore them. They're the best thing about my life right now. I am in real estate. I love it. It's been great. Really stretching. I am a natural introvert, so it has helped me to grow and just be a different, better version of myself. Yeah, so I've been out of my relationship, out of my marriage for about 11 years. I have been divorced for 9.
Perfect. Good job, Sara. That was a great summary. The cool thing is, like, with Sara, is like this whole podcast and how we got connected was a total God thing, which was just amazing. I just knew that we were meant to work together, and she's kind of my yin to my yang, kind of the yin and yang, because she's so good at the things that I'm not so good at. So it works out perfectly. The really cool thing is also Sara comes from domestic abuse and the religious abuse, and that obviously is the big passion with this podcast, is to live brighter and bring awareness to the different forms of domestic abuse, and just how we can kind of be aware and also, kind of support ourselves not to get in situations like that again, and also, have conversations where there's no shame in any of our experiences, and how each of it we use to grow, and to live brighter. So tell me more about, like, your domestic abuse situation. You were married for a long time, and tell us about, like, the type and flavor of the abuse that you were experiencing.
I think the longer that you're away or the more counseling you get, the more you realize that there were a lot of things that weren't right from the very beginning. And I just was not educated in what domestic abuse looked like and what it entailed. And so I really sloughed off a lot of behaviors as a, I just wasn't the best wife. And if I could do better, and if I could be better, and if I could think differently, then things would be different.
The hamster
It
wheel.
was, yes.
It's like the
And
hamster
it
wheel.
was, yeah, gotta love that.
Yeah.
It really was not, you don't get into a domestic abuse relationship and think, oh gosh, this is so horrible. I think I'll stay forever. Like, it was not bad in the beginning. And
Yeah.
then things just progressed. And over 17 years, toward the very end, it can get really bad. Someone showed me after, or when I was thinking about leaving, they showed me the power and control wheel. And that was super eye-opening. It's on your website. I highly recommend that you check it out if you haven't. You out in internet land, not Tara. Anyway, somebody showed it to me, and they'd heard my story, and they pointed out that my relationship didn't just kind of fit in one or two of the pie pieces. It fit in every single piece of that power and control wheel. So, he was not physically abusive, maybe a few times in our long years together, but it was more of the mind control and the mind bending weirdness, and so the psychological abuse, the financial abuse, he isolated us at the end. Just a lot of the emotional and psychological abuse.
Which is so damaging and so hard to describe to people, and especially when you're in it. You kind of like are what do you call it? The frog that's been cooked.
Yeah.
Where it's off in
I just
the
had
water.
no idea. I had no idea. I really thought that I was going crazy. I was so gaslit and just so, yeah, it was hard. It was hard.
Yeah. And then also, I mean, yours was very dangerous. So I want to give some examples of like, because, we can say, oh, it's hard and this and that, but just to give it some context of like, what were some of the things that you were going through? Because it became very dangerous for you and you actually had to stay at Haven, a shelter, for some time. So fill us in there.
Um, like I said, I started feeling like I was going crazy.
That's always a sign that's like something's up.
Yeah, yeah. We were in full-time ministry. We were preparing to go overseas as missionaries, and we had traveled all over the United States to different churches and gotten support. And, you go to churches and you put on your happy face, and I really was happy. I was excited about what we were doing for God. But in owning my own part, I had put Aaron on a pedestal and I had made him my God, my little g God.
Mhm.
And that is a really harmful position to have for your husband.
Yes.
And I just was afraid to say anything because I didn't want to hurt what God might do. I didn't want to be the person to wreck it. And slowly over time, things just progressively got worse and worse and worse. With the emotional abuse, I felt like a little mouse that had backed into a corner and I couldn't figure out a way to get out. I was convinced that I was a horrible mother, that I didn't know how to adequately care for my boys, that even though I graduated valedictorian, I was not capable of helping my child do their math homework. I could go on and on and on. I think it became super dangerous because I was at the point of thinking, I think it would be better for everyone in the world, including my children, if I just was not here anymore.
Yeah.
And never had any thoughts of doing anything to my children. It was mostly, I just want to take myself out of it so they have a better life. And I think that's how it became the most dangerous. However, at the very, very end, I just got really scared. I didn't know. He was not somebody that I recognized anymore. And I was afraid physically because I didn't recognize him. I didn't know what he was thinking. I couldn't have any sort of understanding where he was coming from and accusing me of different things and staying out and not wanting to be around me. And I did get scared. And then God brought all sorts of really amazing people into my life that started speaking truth. Like, hey, you know that this is not really right. And when he talks to you this way, and God was awesome. And he brought all sorts of people, including the Bozeman police in a few different situations. And then I got introduced to Haven, and then I started seeing some different materials in print. And the more I started to try to stand up and say, hey, I don't think this is right, or I don't like when you talk to me this way, or I'm not such a bad mom, or no, you can't lock me out of the bedroom on Mother's Day because you don't like that I worked and took the kids on my own instead of inviting you. The more I tried to stand up and take my power back, the more he clamped down, and I began to understand that that's a really dangerous time for women in abusive
Yes.
relationships. When you start to try to take your power back, they start to get kind of scared, and that's when things escalate, usually to physical and sexual abuse. So,
Yeah.
just some different things that came up where I started to feel like I don't know you and I'm scared of what you might do.
Yes. Yes. And yeah, and thankfully, so Haven is a local shelter. that specializes in domestic abuse. But it was interesting as you became more aware and started to like own things and be like, that doesn't work for me. It became a very scary and dangerous thing. And
Yeah.
that's, there's some relationships where you can like, individuate and be able to express. But when it's abusive, it's especially like in your case, it's like it's more about getting a plan to safety because it's not about someone who's wanting to co-collaborate on a relationship, that wants to co-create. It's somebody that wants power and control. And if they don't have it, it can be very, very dangerous. Our emotional cups can get full without us really even being aware of it. But when our emotional cups get full, we can react rather than respond. We can be fatigued. We can feel burdened. We have struggle with sleep. We can have physical symptoms. And that's why I have the free Barf Notebook page for you. And it's a simple process done regularly where you're barfing out your thoughts, sorting them out, and planning them out. And it's a wealth of healing in that. So go ahead and check the link and have access to that free Barf Notebook process. Live brighter every day. So how did you get out, Sarah?
We had an interaction one night, and he took my phone, and the only way he would give it back was if I promised to call the police, which, looking back, just seems so weird. But I think that he thought that there's no way I would do that, and well, who can understand the mind of someone else completely? I never can. So he told me that in order to give me my phone back, I would have to call him in. And so, of course, I did not want to do that. But I also didn't want him to see that I had contacted a lawyer on my phone. I didn't want him to have my phone. So I agreed. And when he gave me my phone back, I went outside with my keys, thankfully, in my nightgown of all things, and got in my car and called the sheriff's department. Because I didn't want to call 911 because he didn't hit me. And I just really didn't understand that abuse is so much more than being hit.
Yes.
So I called and said, I feel really stupid. This is what happened. And within 3 minutes, there were 3 cop cars outside our door because they knew what was going on way more than I did.
Yeah.
My children were still inside asleep. Aaron obviously was inside, and they talked to me and just found out what was going on. They tried to talk to Aaron because they didn't they didn't have the whole story. So they really just wanted to talk to him and find out if he was okay, and he wouldn't let them in the house, which freaked them out. In the end, they suggested that I stay at Haven. And because I was just in my nightgown. Also, I was really scared for my kids. I didn't want to just leave them. Not that Aaron would ever have done anything to them, but it was such a weird, awful situation. I didn't want to just leave them in the middle of the night. So because I had keys and I was on the lease, they escorted me into the house. And that was a pretty surreal experience, to be surrounded by police officers with their guns drawn, not knowing what they were walking into. I was able to go upstairs and get some clothes, and I tried to talk to my son Luke, and poor kid. He was terrified. He didn't know what was going on. Anyway, so we leave, and it's like one of those moments you'll never forget. It was like a semicircle of police officers around me, standing outside the door, and the tall one said, "You understand that we're not telling you that you have to leave." And I was like, "Yeah, I get that." I said, "We're just suggesting for your safety that you go to Haven tonight or go to a friend's house. We just don't think it's safe for you to be in there." And I said, "I get that. I totally do, and I appreciate it." I said, "I spend 5 minutes around him, and I feel like I'm losing my mind. I feel like I'm going crazy." And the one officer kind of laughed and he said, I just spent 5 minutes around the guy and I understand why you feel that way. He said, I don't know what's going on with him, but something's not right here. And you should not be here tonight. So part of the motivation for me leaving was being terrified that Aaron was going to take the boys and disappear. He threatened that if I didn't start picking it up and being a better mom, that he would take them and I'd never see them again. And I was really afraid that that night he'd pack him up and leave. And I believed that he could disappear. So I slept in the car in the parking lot, hoping that, if I heard the vehicle start up, I could at least follow him and call the cops. And the next morning, my son Luke was standing at my window at 6:30, asking me what I was doing and why I was there, with Aaron standing behind him, smirking at me. And how do you explain to your 8-year-old child what was going on? Aaron told me that he was going to press charges against the police department, and that scared me. And so because in my mind, the police had done nothing wrong except try to protect me. I'm making this story way longer, sorry.
Nope, you're good.
Okay, so I decided that day when the boys were in school to go into the Bozeman Police Department and just tell them that they didn't do anything wrong, and I didn't want anyone to get in trouble on my behalf. And one of the officers had me come into a little room and tell my whole story. And he said, well, I hope this doesn't offend you, but what you've described to me is classic domestic abuse. I said, no, it doesn't offend me. It gives me some comfort knowing that I'm not losing my mind and that I'm not making this up. And he said, I'd love if you would talk to Haven. And so he took me upstairs and I met with a legal advocate up there and just, retold my story again. And that's when she pulled out the power and control wheel. And when I saw it in writing, it was just like getting a bucket of ice cold water dumped over your head. I wasn't making it up, and I wasn't crazy, and I wasn't losing my mind, and this was real. And I also recognized at that moment that I could go back and potentially die one way or another, or I could open my mouth and move forward and speak truth and get to safety. So I decided to go to the shelter because from what I understood, maybe I'm getting this wrong, but because it was a federally recognized organization, I could take the boys there and be safe. And Aaron would not have the right to come and take the children away from me, because that's ultimately what drove it, was my kids. So I went home and felt like I was in a Lifetime movie and threw some stuff in a suitcase and went to the school and got Luke after school and had my younger one, and we went to Haven, and that's where everything changed. And I adored my ex-husband. I really loved him. And I was so naive in thinking that I'm going to leave. He's going to say, whoa, something is wrong here. Let's evaluate and figure out how we can make this better. And that never happened. And in a way, that was a blessing, because it just helped me to stay where I was and get stronger and get better and figure things out.
That is huge. That was brave. And you were also dealing with a narcissist too. Like, now that you look back, like, yeah, that's all classic narcissistic behavior and stuff like that. Would you agree with that?
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, that was super brave of you to do that. And I feel like that's what happens with domestic abuse. You feel like you're going crazy. You want to kill yourself. I know people that have killed themselves. And, it's very tragic. And so I'm so thankful you got out and for your story. And then you're an advocate for Haven. Tell me about your background growing up and kind of your belief system that kind of was a setup for you to be in a domestic abuse situation.
I've thought about that question a lot. And I think it would be easy for me to try to blame my mom. But in looking back, I really think the reason she pushed me and was as controlling as she was because she wanted me to have a better life than she did. She wanted a strong, independent woman, and so she pushed as hard as she could to get that person. I think ultimately, from what I can figure out, I slept with my boyfriend when I was 15, and he was not a bad guy. He wasn't the greatest guy at the time. But I think that when I did that, I somehow made an agreement that it meant I was going to give up my power and give up my voice. And I just was not educated. People are not taught what abuse looks like.
Right.
And I love that this next generation is way more focused on mental health and educating in different areas around abuse. And I think I just didn't understand what was happening and what was going on.
Yes.
And then, I did have a mom that was loud and opinionated, and it was easy with my personality to just do what she told me to do. And then I married somebody that was loud and opinionated, and it was just easier for me to do what he told me to do. And I was part of a church that strongly emphasized being a respectful wife. And somehow it all got twisted and messed up in my head into me being the one that was always in the wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very insightful. And you're right. Like, we can be impacted by our past, but we all have to take ownership of our life and our decisions. And sometimes we land in places and we're like, how did I get here? But yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, doing the
yeah.
decisions to grow and to like change and let God redeem all of our situations is super powerful. And you've been also like, as far as living brighter every day and just focusing on that, it's been fun to see you because you've been progressively just living brighter and progressively working on yourself. And, recently you've even done Splunkna, and that's been really impactful. And that's one of the reasons why I'm getting trained in it as part of my life coaching. But can you share a little bit about how you were able to live brighter through Splunkna and some of the other choices you've made?
Yeah, I think for me, living brighter is being okay, finding grace to be okay with the days when I still cry and I'm sad and low, and rejoicing that the number of days that are happy and bright have increased. Yeah, I live brighter by still seeing a counselor if I need it. I I still walk my dog even if it's 11 o'clock at night. I I'm so thankful for Splunkna. I see a traditional counselor as well, and Splunkna I feel has done some amazing things for me.
Can you explain what Splunkna is a little bit? Because I haven't really
Yeah.
gone into it in the podcast.
Okay. I will do my best.
It's difficult, isn't it?
It is a different it is a different approach.
Yes.
It is a faith-based approach. God is very much front and center. And it deals with your subconscious. It does muscle testing. It recognizes that you store trauma in different areas in your body. There are aspects of EMDR to it. There are aspects of the agreements that we might make with Satan
Mm-hmm.
and the ways that he can control us. Not that he has power in my life, because I know Jesus and he is my ultimate warrior, but there are different ways that he can influence our life, and we agree to different things. So it works with that side of things. And for me, it's been really powerful because it also deals with a lot of it is forgiveness
Yeah.
and recognizing different things that you've gone through in your past. I know you talk about little T traumas and big T traumas, and sometimes I laugh when I'm in a session because I feel like, oh my gosh, are we going to talk about a picture I drew when I was 8? That doesn't seem worthy, but it's something that impacted me and has stayed with me for 40 years. So
Yes.
apparently, it was a part of it. Sponkna is really cool. It's hard to describe for me because there's so many different aspects, but I do know that it has made a huge difference in my life.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Really.
one reason why I want to add it as part of my life coaching is because people don't have to talk about their traumas. Like literally, it's asking Holy Spirit, asking a person's
Yeah.
subconscious. So it's a great way to not re-traumatize them and do the
Yes.
work. And that's super powerful. So
I agree. I don't have to walk in and be like, okay, today I want to talk about X, Y, and Z. Because
yeah,
half the time I just walk in and say, I want to see where God takes us, and that makes me happy.
and it's
And
amazing.
it's
Yeah.
incredible what God does. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing and being vulnerable. And honestly, just the more people can understand how domestic abuse works and how it's so different for every single person, and how like we can grow from this, and we can also grow in our minds so that we don't get in another situation, and we can get brighter and change our beliefs systems and change the agreements we've made in order to live our fullest and best lives. And you've been a great example of that. So I really appreciate you letting me finally interview you.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you. I would have to say that part of how I have grown is just having you in my life. So I really appreciate you too.
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
To everyone else, live brighter, 1% at a time. I believe in you. Take care. Stay tuned for our next episode.